computer.
Yep,
Great.
recording.
And then here we go.
All right.
Okay.
And as soon as I get the right, and Josh.
I'll tell you when it says it's going.
Okay.
Looks like it's redirecting to Facebook Live. I think we're good.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
now streaming live. Cool.
I see it. And let me share it, if I can share it, with. I don't see if I can. Hold up.
Wait, now would I also be able to do that too?
Yeah.
I think you can share.
So how do I do that?
I think
You
go to my
to
page.
Josh's page, yeah, and then you just share.
Okay, hold on. Let me just do that real quick before we.
The Josh Nelson music one, so the one with me drinking in Manhattan.
Hey.
The photo.
Yeah.
Guilty as charged.
Josh Nelson.
Hey everybody, please stand by
Hey,
while
everybody.
we, get going.
Josh Nelson, not the Discoveries page. I had it.
No.
I think I had it. Hold on. Sorry.
Personals.
There it is. And then just share this.
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
I shared it on my page.
Okay, share now, friends. Okay, good.
All right.
All right, it's going. All right.
Cool. Well, welcome everybody. Edition number 3 of the West Coast Jazz Hour. Today with special guest, esteemed guitar player, composer, arranger, Anthony Wilson. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Kevin. Good to be here.
And of course, with my partner in crime, pianist extraordinaire and West Coast jazz geek, Josh Nelson. Hello to you too.
Hey.
And of course,
good to be here.
Yours truly, Kevin Van den Elzen, drummer, band leader, etc., etc., etc. So
we love the et ceteras.
Yeah. I don't use that word very often. So before we're going to go into the music, Anthony, I'm actually pretty curious about where do you think that your love of this kind of specific music, the West Coast jazz from the 50s and 60s, has started, and what was the moment that you really knew that you were into this stuff? Of course, I can assume that your dad had a pretty big influence on that, but I'm pretty curious.
Yeah, I would say so, because just because it was in the air, in the sense that even when I was 14, 15, starting to listen to jazz, or even beforehand, not even really being an active jazz listener, I would hear my dad talk about different musicians of the region, of the city, of the area. He lived in Los Angeles from the late 40s until the time that he passed, but he had a couple of stints living in San Francisco. So there was many references, if he would talk about himself and his own experience, or he would talk about musicians that he knew, these players would, or writers or bands would just come up in casual conversation. So it's the kind of thing that I heard about, people, like names of people in bands, like Bob Enevoldsen or Kranti Candoli. These weren't like I didn't have to go seek them out at some point when I started to get into that music, because they played on his band, know. Mel Lewis, obviously. So many players were just kind of in the air. You'd hear about Art Pepper, or you'd hear about Curtis Counts, or you'd hear about Carl Perkins.
Right.
I would hear about these players from my dad, So I think a good thing about that is that I was given a, a, a little bit of a wider lens into what the music was about, that wasn't about the hierarchies that are created when you start studying jazz in school.
Right.
And there's kind of the narrative that is told to you about what the important schools of jazz are, the important eras of jazz, etc. And I mean, really, actually, West Coast jazz is marginalized and thought of to be somehow less, less in some ways legitimate, or some kind of, in some way, following after things that came before, which is as Dr. Fiona Hill would say, it's a false narrative. It's not true. It's really, so these were people active in the world of jazz that either settled here, or they traveled through here, or they found community here. And so, and they had traveled other places, and they'd been in regional bands. They didn't all come from here. And they mixed with other musicians, and there was, in the same way that there is today, that kind of great cross-pollination of ideas, and thinking it's not just following. It's not that something happens in New York and then people over here have to catch up to it.
Right.
I mean, there's elements of that. I'm not gonna I wouldn't say that there isn't that. I mean, Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie had to come here in 1945 and play live for, I think, the real impact of what they were doing to be felt by musicians here that hadn't had the chance to really hear them live. But so all I'm saying is that, I heard these names, Marty Page or Mel Lewis or any number of people, Billy May, since my dad was such a part of the world of arranging.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about arrangers. So I would go through records looking for those people, as well as the people that were maybe more kind of sought after from New York or the East Coast, from New York, Detroit, Philly, or what have you.
Right.
But I loved the music always. It's the first times that I heard, Jerry Mulligan and Chet Baker together, or Chet Baker, singing, or Art Pepper. I loved that music so much. And, and that's only grown, as I've learned more about these great musicians and their lives and stories, and it's only grown.
Right. Yeah. You were completely in the middle of all of that.
Yeah, and my father being Black, there was also, his friends were the Black musicians who, that's also a kind of a funny false narrative about West Coast jazz music, is that it's somehow a white thing, and it's not really. And I would say that there was some, I don't know, what would you call it? There was, I wouldn't call it segregation, but people did have their own camps, and there were white bands, and there were white communities and Black communities, but the music was all one thing to me. That's how I processed it. Like, oh, these are the West Coast musicians, Harold Land, Curtis Counts, Gerald Wiggins, Teddy Edwards, Ernie Andrews, as much as the white musicians, and they all created, in a way, what we think of as the West Coast tradition.
That's a very beautiful way of describing that. Thank you. Yeah,
Sure.
That's some inspiring stuff right there. I would say let's go into the music. So, Josh, why don't you start us off with something cool?
Thank you. I have to say this is really fun. I mean, it's the third episode of doing this with you, Kevin, and what a great first guest in Anthony being here, and who I just have to say was one of my, and continues to be one of my, big influences, but also someone that I learned about writing through from his own writing and his dad. And some of my early memories of starting to see live music in Los Angeles were seeing Anthony at the old Catalina Bar and Grill. Actually, that gig, Adult Themes. What a great show! I remember being there for that. Such a great record. And then we've talked about this gentleman before, who I'm going to play a track for, or a cut from the record, because he was another one of my introductions to the West Coast scene. And it's, of course, great Jack Sheldon. And play, buddy, play. Something lighter fare to start. This is, to put it lightly, but Jack, of course, for those who don't know, recently passed, and I got to play in his band for a little while. And this is a record with two different sides, two different bands. This is a song written by the pianist Paul Moore. I'm not sure. I actually wasn't familiar with him. Did you know him, Anthony? Who that was?
No.
M-O-E-R? Yeah.
No.
So it's Jack, Chet Baker also on trumpet, Art Pepper on alto, Herb Geller on alto, Harold Land on tenor, Stu Williamson on valve trombone, Paul on piano, Buddy Clark on bass, and Mel Lewis on drums, recorded in Hollywood.
God.
Yeah, killer band, right?
I don't know this record.
It's so swinging,
already,
man.
Right off the bat. Anthony, well, Josh knows this, but Anthony, I am the biggest Mel Lewis geek. I think I need to.
I've discovered this about you.
I need to check out everything that Mel Mel did, and how he plays and how he makes everything feel and sound so good. And that's what I'm striving to go for that. So just this already to start it off with is going to blow my mind already.
This one's for you, Kevin.
Thank you.
1957 Hollywood on Crescendo Records. So I'll share the audio here.
have to show anything anymore. I'm out.
That's
Oh,
fantastic.
yeah.
No, I mean, that's such a sweet track. The something about that tune. I think I want to learn it.
Yeah.
I forgot about the second side of this record being so. What a nice opener, and original this pianist I need to look more into, Paul Mower. I have no idea who he is. But just Jack is in top form, late 50s.
Yeah.
The ensemble sounds just tight, but all loose at the same time. Those great lines. Mel just right in there with those fills as usual. Oh my goodness.
Simple and tasteful.
And
So,
elegant backgrounds. I like I think who was the arranger? I'm forgetting.
So it's not the piano player.
No.
Ah.
I got to figure out who did the arrangements on this. I didn't do my homework, boys. Homework. Anyway, whoever did the arrangement was slick.
Yeah, super cool, kind of folding in improvisations and the sequences of those is awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks. Okay.
Yeah.
That first setup of the drums before, just the first whatever, it's just like a perfect Mel
right
setup.
Yeah. He just didn't care about being flashy or whatever. And I've seen many interviews, and I've read the book also, which really the biography from Chris Smith, from the view from the back of the band. It really depicts his personality, and he was a stubborn motherfucker. Excuse my Dutch, but he was so focused on like what he wanted to do musically. And sometimes that rubbed also, like the wrong way with some people. But, to me, it's just, pure sound, elegance, time, everything is there.
Yeah. I got to play with him one time. It was so amazing. My father did a show in New York with the American Jazz Orchestra.
Oh, yeah.
And so Mel was on the band. And so I played just a few numbers with them on the concert, and I was just to be near Mel Lewis was like the most amazing thing. For right now, I can't remember who was playing bass on the band. It was Dick Katz on the drums, and I mean on the piano, and I cannot remember who was on bass, but just Mel, and like when Mel was riding the China, and just so beautiful sound wise, on the drums. It was sound, and I you hear that in the recordings. You hear just the sound of the drums, the way he touched them. It's like really unique, I think.
Yeah. I haven't heard a whole lot of people doing that, what he does. I hear that with several West Coast guys who've been inspired.
Sure.
Definitely Shelly Manne is there. Right. But some of the underground West Coast guys, like our beloved Jack Sperlin, and Alvin Stoller.
Sure.
Those guys, and Frankie Cap also.
Sure.
It's in the same vein of like just playing super swinging and great time, sounding great, but nothing like flashy to it, or no how should I put it? There's never any ego there. They're not trying to sound great, It's just effortless.
Yeah.
It's just effortless. And that's that's a discovery journey for me, how to do that. On the drums.
Yeah, and you could hear. I totally agree with Kevin. I mean, you could hear that these guys were playing together all the time on sessions, whether it was this exact group, but the community and the bond, you could just hear that they knew how to blend with each other. Just not a lost art, just something that was probably much more commonplace, as there were so many more sessions back in that day. They probably do two or three a day or something, it's like, man.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool you got to play with him, Anthony.
Yeah,
That's really, really neat.
for one brief moment.
Yeah. Well, but that stays with you for the rest of your musical career for sure.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Let's continue with you, Anthony. I'm very curious what you have in store.
Okay, I'm gonna play you. So let's see. I got to do this sharing thing. So, I think maybe it's already set up. I already set it up, right? So,
yeah.
So
should be good if you press play to whatever you want to play.
What can I say, dear, after I say I'm sorry? What can I do to prove it to you I'm sorry? I didn't mean to ever be mean to you. If I didn't care, I wouldn't feel like I do. I was all wrong, but right or wrong, I don't blame you. Why should I take somebody like you and shame you? I know that I made you cry, and I'm so sorry, dear. But what can I say, dear, after I say I'm sorry? To prove it to you, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ever be mean to you. If I didn't care, I wouldn't feel like I do. I was all wrong, but right or wrong, I don't blame you. Why should I take somebody like you and shame you? I know that I made you cry, and I'm so sorry, dear. So what can I say? What can I do after I say I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's this is an album. Do you guys know this album?
I do know this. Yeah,
it's one. This is like a favorite for me that I stumbled on years ago and bought it. It's Joe Stafford. It's called Joe Plus Jazz, and I bought it. Actually, I found a little CD cover. I bought it during the CD era, and it was. I had to buy this.
Yeah.
It just said Joe Plus Jazz.
Yeah.
And it said Ben Webster,
yeah.
Johnny Hodges, Ray Nance, Jimmy Rolls,
yeah.
Don Fagerquist, Monty Candoli, Russ Freeman, Mel Lewis, arranged and conducted by Johnny Mandel. And I was like, boom! What?
Oh my goodness!
Are you talking about?
Yeah.
So I started listening to the record, and I was like, "This is so amazing!" And but it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. I mean, in the sense of you had well, first of all, it doesn't list everybody. It's a larger band than who's listed here, so they're listing the stars. But you've got these Ellingtonians, and you've got Johnny Mandel arrangements, and
Yep.
so I actually called Johnny Mandel about it, and I was like, "What's the deal with this album, man? Like, it's so insane. Like, it's so Ellingtonian. Like, but it's so you, and it's so like the other folks who are on it." And by then, I think I was able to find out a little bit more about the personnel. So, yeah, Harry Carney's on there as well,
God.
Lawrence Brown. So it's basically like a hybrid Ellington and West Coast band.
Yeah.
And Johnny said, well, we were going to do this album, and I was making the arrangements, and I heard that the Ellington band was going to be in town, and that Ben Webster was going to be here, and all these guys, and I thought, well, what a great idea to like put those guys in the mix and do this thing. So it's like it's a really, really beautiful album.
Yeah.
She's singing, as you can hear, so beautifully. The arrangements are just, with a kind of a very light hand, but really enhancing the performances, and not, he's allowing for a lot of improvisation, especially from Ben Webster and Ray Nance, and
Right.
There's a beautiful version of Just Squeeze Me. They do Daydream. They do, The Folks Who Live on the Hill is great. Midnight Sun is really great. So I just thought that was also, a nice example of kind of West Coast musicians collaborating in a really beautiful, fruitful way with people who were coming through town.
Mm-hmm.
And how melded the traditions are, and how beautifully, locked in they sounded. And Mel, so I've seen some credits that say Shelley plays on some of the album and Mel but I think that's Mel, right?
That sounds like Mel to me.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And on a couple of the songs, there's some rhythm guitar. I actually should find out from Johnny, who plays rhythm guitar, but it's just beautiful.
Yeah, that's
Sure is.
I mean, that's the typical, like the typical, or I would say like the biggest school example of, like that people from the East Coast and West Coast were coming together, and it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And I actually, that your story reminds me of this CD that Frank Sinatra made, Francis A. and Edward K., which is the whole Ellington band, but Billy May made all of the arrangements.
So
That's right.
good.
That's right.
And you can only find that in the liner notes, but it sounds so like Ellington. But then Billy May wrote everything. He most likely had Ellington also in mind, but also the whole the vibe that band had. Like they could turn anything into their own thing. And that record is also, in my opinion, just a hidden gem. Yeah.
It's magnificent, and it's one of the best sounding orchestral records. Lee Hirschberg recorded it, and it's that album. That's one of my all-time favorites. Those arrangements are so sick, and the band is a little bit loose, and Sinatra singing so great. It's Jimmy Jones on the piano on that, or I forget who's on. Because I don't think it's Ellington playing.
I don't know for sure.
But magnificent album.
Yeah. That version of Sunny, when I heard that for the first time, I was like, what? That really took me by surprise, for sure.
Totally. And Yellow Days, and I like Sunrise. That's one of my favorite. That's just, I like the Sunrise, just breaks my heart.
Yeah. That record is just insane. Well, I think I'm gonna show you my first pick, and Anthony, you've mentioned Don Fagerquist. This is actually a record of him. It actually has two titles. It's called the Don Fagerquist Octet 8x8 Music to Fill a Void. And and it features, besides Fagerquist, Bob Enevolson on valve trombone, Marty Page on piano, Ed Leddy on second trumpet, Mel Lewis on drums, Herb Geller, Ronnie Lang, and Buddy Clark. And this song is called Aren't You Glad You're You? So I'm going to share the audio with you guys.
Great.
And here we go.
Beautiful.
I'm just playing an excerpt of it. Yeah, I mean
that's so great.
Me and Josh, we've talked about Don Fagerquist a bunch of times, and you know, the most underrated trumpet player that you can imagine. You know, like nobody in my undergrad days or even in my grad days at USC, nobody talks about Don Fagerquist.
No, it took me a while to get onto him. I mean, that for me, that came from appreciation of Marty Page's band, and so then he was on all of those, and I was like, this guy's incredible, and
yeah,
and that solo there, it's such an example. You can really hear him. You can hear his process of tracking the melody, you know, of making the melody. It's just so melodic and bel canto, beautiful, you know, beautiful turns of phrase and contours of melody.
Right.
So the tone's just...
Oh my God, the tone.
Yeah.
We have some comments. I'll just read a couple. Jim Bourne actually just commented, does Don Fagerquist make you think of Carl Saunders? And I have got the pleasure of playing on a couple of Carl's records, in fact, one that's out now. And we've talked at length and listened to together many Fagerquist records because he's a huge fan of his, what you're saying, Anthony, his tone and his lyricism and his ideas. I couldn't agree more, Jim, and I'm sure Carl would agree.
And I was thinking of Carl Saunders as it was
right.
playing, so,
yeah,
because Carl's talked to me a lot about him as
sure,
well,
yeah.
and yeah, it's that same same beautiful kind of lineage there.
Yeah, definitely. It's somebody who also takes a shining role for me is Buddy Clark on bass. How like the entrances and the very detailed, very small detailed entrances that he makes, but his sound and his beat, it just meshes so nicely together with Mel, and it's totally not a surprise to me that those two guys were the rhythm section for Jerry Mulligan's concert jazz bands.
Yeah.
Second track with Buddy Clark on it today.
Right. Right.
Jack. Yeah. I love how there's these common musicians that kind of weave through these discussions. It's so cool.
Yeah, but that gives me also the impression that there was so much work back in those days, and they were called to do everything. There's so many things.
Yeah. We've got all of these records, and it's like endless. We're still,
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, like this, the Jack Sheldon thing, that's a completely new discovery for me. And I'm like, I know almost everything that Mel is on. And then I found out about a new record that I've never heard.
Jim actually on the chat pointed out that this is a kind of a reissue, like a compilation, because Run Buddy Run, his show that Jack had was in the 60s, and this was actually recorded in the 50s. So just a little discrepancy there. For the detail oriented. Thank you,
right.
Thank you, Jim.
So there might be some recordings also from that Jack Sheldon All-Star Big Bands. There was a record that he made also.
Such a great album.
Yeah.
One of your favorites.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would also like to say to the people who are watching, like, if you guys have any comments or questions, please drop them below, and we'll try also to keep an eye out on that. Why don't we go back to Anthony for your second pick?
Okay. So I chose this Claire Fisher recording that I love from an album called Thesaurus. I'm not sure what year it is, but it's great. The album is great, and there's actually a bit of tribute to Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn on that album as well. There's a song called The Duke, and they also do Upper Manhattan Medical Group,
which is so great. That arrangement.
It's really good. It's really good. I mean, we could listen to that, but I chose this one called Miles Behind because it's got a really Can I play the whole chart, or does it get a bit long? Or like switch, or go a little bit forward in the middle or something.
Yeah, whatever you feel like. We're going over time anyways, but I'm having too good of a time, so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so yeah, and it's so it's Claire Fisher, Gary Foster on lead alto, Kim Richmond,
Kim,
a name that I didn't know, Louis Ciotti and Warren Marsh on tenor saxes, Bill Perkins on baritone, John Lowe on bass sax. So it's like also a really interesting ensemble with bass sax.
Yeah.
On trumpets, Larry McGuire, Buddy Childers, Conti Condoli, Steve Huffstetter, and Stuart Fisher. Who is that? Is that Claire's son, or is that Claire's?
No, Claire's son is Brent.
Okay,
might be his brother. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if he had one or more sons.
Yeah, I don't know.
And Gil Falco, Charlie Loper, and David Sanchez on trombones. Probably not to be confused with David Sanchez. Morris Rapace on bass trombone. So a few names there that I didn't know. I only knew of Charlie Loper. And Chuck Domanico on bass and Larry Bunker on drums.
Yeah, some of the best Larry Bunker that I've heard.
Super cool. It's super cool. So yeah, I'll play this bad boy. Let me get to my Spotify. I love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that in a while. What a nice reminder of Claire's prowess as an orchestrator. That
Yeah.
last, when he's going down with those chords,
So good.
it's so good.
Yeah, that whole
Oh.
ensemble section, though, so beautifully developed. Just I mean, it reminds me. It sounds like he must have been listening to George Russell quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. Yeah.
You know, but just in that way, just like letting those lines create their own life. You know, really following them through in a patient way. That's so good. I love that track.
I've played
kind of wild and woolly, and
yeah.
and he's making them work. They're all having to work, you know.
Just closed my eyes and I was just missing hearing live jazz in that track. Not that anything we haven't played, like just that moment, I just felt like I was in a club listening, like they were there and I was there, and that feeling of rediscovering or discovering something the first time and hearing it, how it hits you.
Yeah.
That was emotional for me. So thanks, Anthony. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the fortune of because Brent still leads the big band. Right. It's the Claire Fisher big band led by Brent Fisher, and I gotta say that book is probably the hardest big band book that I've played here in town. And most of the charts that he plays in that band are also still original copies from Claire. And to just to go through the repertoire, the old repertoire that Claire wrote, and also some of Brent's stuff is also truly great. It's really fun to play with that band. It's a challenge. But it's very fun to play those.
I did it one time, and I was like floored at how hard it was. I knew it was going to be hard, and I got to play on Claire's keyboard at his house.
Yeah.
So cool.
I think that the piano parts are like the hardest parts actually in the band.
It was hard. It was a good challenge for me.
Yeah, definitely.
That's fantastic. Anthony.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much. I'll take it from here, and this is actually something that has come to my attention actually 2 days ago, believe it or not. I was doing a listening session in my living room just by myself, listening to some Billy May, and then I have to give a shout out to my buddy Sam Webster, great swing drummer, also a West Coast enthusiast. And he said, like, dude, listen to this. And it's not on Spotify. It's not on any social or on any streaming services anymore. But Shelly Mann made a trio record with Andre Previn and Leroy Vinegar, My Fair Lady. But he also made a version for a big band, and I believe also with strings, that is arranged by Johnny Williams. And Jack Sheldon sings together with Irene Krall. And the list, it's top LA cats: Monty Budwig on bass, Russ Freeman on piano, Al Persino, Conti Condoli, Jack Nimitz, Frank Rosolino, Mike Barone, among other people. So I'm just going to play this because I have this as one big file. And this is the start of My Fair Lady.
Cool. Love this.
Look at her, a prisoner of the gutters, condemned by every syllable she utters. By right she should be taken out and hung for the cold-blooded murder of the English tongue. This is what the British population calls an elementary education. Why can't the English teach their children how to speak? This verbal class distinction by now should be antique. If you spoke as she does, sir, instead of the way you do, why, you might be selling flowers too. An Englishman's way of speaking absolutely classifies him. The moment he talks, he makes some other Englishman despise him. Use proper English and you're regarded as a freak. Oh, why can't the English learn to speak? why can't the English teach their children how to speak? The Norwegians learn Norwegian, the Greeks are taught their Greek. In France, every Frenchman knows his language from A to Z. Oh, why can't the English? Why can't the English? Why can't the English learn to speak?
So this just goes on for 40 minutes with tempo changes and changes going into the big band and then vocalists with a small group. But first of all, Shelley's playing on this record is incredible. Probably some of the best playing that I've heard from Shelley ever. Johnny Williams, these arrangements are just, I heard Star Wars and Indiana Jones already, like yeah, it's right there. So, and not a lot of people know this, that John Williams, who used to be Johnny Williams, did all of this great jazz stuff, and this record just grabbed me by the throat, and I just couldn't stop listening to it. I've been listening to this for like the past 3 days. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Fantastic, yeah.
1964 in Capitol Studios.
And Jack,
so great.
So great, man. I just his phrasing and his whole thing is so great.
Sure is.
And there's a lot of coolness in there. Like he just doesn't give a shit. He just does his thing.
Oh yeah.
And
original.
Yeah, and were you there at the memorial concert, Anthony?
No.
Me and Josh, we were reminiscing that we were both there at Catalina's and the big band. His big band played there, and a couple of other guest artists were playing there, and like also bouncing around his jokes. And it was quite a special night. Yeah,
it really was. Yeah, Chuck Finley played the solo on "Shadow Your Smile," and Tierney Sutton, who's I think joining us right now. Hi, Tierney. She sang beautifully. Oh, that was such a special night. Our second Jack Sheldon kind of thing today. That's cool.
Yeah, most definitely.
Apropos.
Yeah. I mean,
such a great arrangement.
But it just, for me, it just goes in between Shelley, Mel, and Jack Sperling. Like, so sorry to everybody if this is getting a little monotone from my end, but I just can't help myself.
Yeah, we've definitely focused on some of them, but there's so many, like Anthony's saying. I mean, there's just so many great recordings.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just narrow it down by year or band or, so it's nice to just kind of drop the needle wherever it may fall,
Yeah,
and how you're feeling in a particular day too. As I was like, curating it and like, oh, what feels right today? What's the flavor, and it's usually going to be pretty swinging.
Yeah. I think we're going to continue with our final round of 3 tracks. So, Josh, why don't you play another thing?
Sure. Well, I think I'm gonna do something that has Shelley on it.
Oh my God!
Hard to believe, I know,
Yeah.
Shelley, man. I brought up my good friend Kevin Canner many times because he was one of my first introductions to not only Shelley Mann but just West Coast jazz in general, and Jeff Hamilton, who I've had the pleasure of playing with, and I think I saw he joined.
He joined.
Jeff Hammer.
Yes.
Hammer.
No.
My mentor.
Yeah. Who I stumped when I had the Jack Sperling Pete Fountain Presents at my house. He saw it and he's like, "What's that?" and then we played it. That was actually on our first show. That's such a great record, Pete Fountain Presents Jack Sperling. So good. But this one's going out to you, Hammer. And this is, let me share my sound. Whoop. Kevin, I think you need to stop sharing. Get off your high horse and stash.
You're oversharing.
Yeah.
You're oversharing, man.
My apologies.
No worries. Just don't let it happen again.
You've been warned once.
I'm having so much fun with you guys. This is great. This is 1958, one of Kevin Cantor's actually favorite records, The Gambit. Shelly Manne and his men recorded at Contemporary Records Studios, 1957 and 58. Shelly on drums, of course, Stu Williamson on trumpet, valve trombone, Charlie Mariano, who wrote a lot of these compositions, on alto saxophone, Russ Freeman on piano, and Monty Budwig on the bass.
Who we just heard on the My Fair Lady thing too. Monty
That's
Python.
right. Yep. There we go. And Shelley, yeah. So
And Russ Freeman too. It seems
so
to be
do we have some
section.
common denominators working here? So this is one of the some of the piece of Castling is the name of this one. Keep going, but I want to make sure we get to the rest.
Just that transition that he goes into brushes, seamless.
Right.
You heard that?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry to stop it so abruptly there.
Yeah.
We're running out of time.
Yeah.
We could be here all night.
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
God, I was just thinking about the legacy of trumpet players that we've talked about and the lyricism. I mean, Stu is just playing his tail off on that track.
Yeah.
Sounds so beautiful. And Fagerquist and Sheldon. My goodness, what a fun trumpet hang.
Yes.
Aside from drums, Shelley and Mel.
And I think that from the previous one, from My Fair Lady, that's a school example that Al Pacino was one of the greatest lead trumpet players ever.
Sure, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just love the writing on that one as it starts kind of fugue-like and counterpoint.
Yeah.
And splits in, and then how he kind of brings it back.
Yeah, that took me by surprise. That
cool record.
Fugue thing. Yeah, definitely.
I loved it. And then their unison, it's just their unison is so pure and beautiful. I love it.
Totally.
I think that's like one of the remarkable things about the old West Coast thing is that intonation and tuning and playing together was always spot on all of those records. In comparison to what the more progressive style in New York was around that time, late 50s, early 60s. I definitely see a very big difference between the West Coast and the East Coast in that era, and that's one of the biggest things that resonates with me for sure. So
Nice.
let's continue with Anthony.
Okay, let's see. Let me see what I got here. Well, I think I was trying to figure out, I had a few things kind of in the mix, but let's play something with my dad on it. So,
Nice.
yeah, this is the Curtis Counts band. So my dad was not the regular trumpet player in Curtis Counts' band. It was Jack Sheldon, actually. But my dad did a number of sessions with them, including this one with Elmo Hope.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so it's Harold Land on tenor, my father Gerald Wilson on trumpet, Curtis Counts on bass, Frank Butler on drums, and Elmo Hope on piano. And this is an Elmo Hope song called "So Nice." Bass go because the bass is groovy.
Right. Yeah.
the time. But yeah, nobody really talks about Curtis Counts really, but that
Right.
band is amazing. I mean, there's several albums and it's just beautiful recordings, also on Contemporary Records. So, and I love the Contemporary Records recordings. So I think a lot of those were done by Roy Dunan, and his sound was just incredible. You know, many engineers and sound people love to go into the comparison between Roy Dunan's records and Rudy Van Gelder's records, and a lot of people really prefer the sound on the Roy Dunan records. I mean, really, there's a certain kind of sound on those old Contemporary records.
Oh yeah,
really special.
I don't know this. This is definitely something that I'm going to check out.
Yeah, so I mean, he would have recorded, you know, Way Out West and the Pole Winners, all of that stuff. And you know, the Contemporary studio, I may be wrong, it's possible, but I believe it was just their offices, and they sort of set up the office, you know, like after hours to do sessions. It's very possible that it was like that, but there's a great precision and warmth to those recordings, and a sense of space and tone that's really great. So yeah, so Curtis Counts and Harold Land and my dad.
Oh man, your dad sounds so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. This, I was just looking, we brought this one up. Music to listen to Red Norva by. This was on one of them. I was just making sure. Yeah, sound by Roy Dunan. Yeah,
he was the man. And then he
such a good sound.
Living out the rest of his life, kind of in seclusion in like Arizona or something. And but there was a really great article about him in Stereophile magazine about 10 years ago. That sort of, they went and they interviewed him about how he did those records, and beautiful sound on all of them, really.
Yeah. Oh, I love the Contemporary sound. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for showing that. So this is going to be the last one, and I thought, you know, like, because Anthony, you're in our midst, I wanted to play something from your dad too.
Okay.
And this comes from You Better Believe It on Pacific Records, if I'm not mistaken.
Good.
The Gerald Wilson Orchestra featuring Richard Groove Holmes on organ, and among other people, Teddy Edwards, Harold Land on saxes, Jeannie Bond on bass, Al Persino on lead trumpet, Buddy Collette, Gene Edwards on guitar, and of course Melda Taylor Lewis on drums. And this is I believe the second tune of the record, and I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing it right. Jerry, spelled with one R.
Maybe she's watching. It's possible. That's my sister. That's my big sister.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, Geraldine. And she lives up in Santa Maria. And yeah, so that's the song.
Well, I thought we would go out with a bang, because that's definitely, you know, like a powerhouse.
That's so good.
Track. Yeah. All right, here we go.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Anthony, do you have any idea why your father specifically chose for Richard Holmes as the organ player? Because that also didn't happen that much back in the day, that a big band was put together with a Hammond organ.
You know, I really would like to know exactly how that came about, how that partnership came about, because it's his first album. It was probably actually a Pacific Jazz, some kind of tie-in, because I think Groove Holmes recorded for Pacific Jazz, maybe. I'm not sure about that, but yeah. So it's my dad's first album for Pacific Jazz. So bringing him in could have been some kind of tie-in. But I mean, I think my dad just loved the B3 as well, and thought, you know, so many of these pieces would be so beautiful with the B3 there in the middle of the, you know, as really the featured soloist. I mean, man, he's driving that Leslie hard.
Oh yeah.
So great.
Oh yeah.
You really get it in the recording, you know.
Yeah. Well, the backgrounds that your father wrote also help definitely to
Right.
rise that whole.
Yeah, you come up to that for sure.
Yeah.
So all of it together creates such a great energy. I love that arrangement so much. It's got like all the hallmarks of his writing, you know, kind of the density and the rhythmic quality of it, and the looseness of it. You know, you can use these backgrounds interchangeably, you know, so if a soloist is really going, you have some options, and it's just beautiful. Thanks for sharing that one.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, good call.
It's kind of the same thing that, so how you say that he chose also to give the soloist space. That's kind of also what Thad and Mel did a couple of years after, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they had their way, you know, so you had small group jazz within the big band, rather than it being this one kind of monolith that you had to kind of figure out how you were going to do it. No, you could have small groups playing in the big band. You could have duos, like, you know, I mean, Thad and Mel took it to that beautiful place of duos and small, almost little chamber events that happened in performances on the fly, you know, through conduction. And how amazing was that? So
yeah. Well, on that note, I mean, I've been smiling for this whole session. Like, this feels as good as playing live. I have to be honest.
So nice, really nice. Well, I saw your previous two discussions, and they were just so fun and so much great music, and so much to learn from. And I was like, oh, I love these guys. I want to talk to them too. Thanks for allowing me to, you know, join the party. Really...
Of course, yeah.
Thrilled to have you, man.
We couldn't say no to that offer to talk with you, and that you show your stuff to us too. Yeah, of course. So on that note, I want to say thank you to you, Anthony. Thank you, Josh, again for a great session.
Thank you. Thanks for having
everybody who is listening on Facebook Live, and. We're here. We're gonna continue with the series, and it's gonna be a surprise for both us and you, who's gonna be the next guest. So we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thanks for joining, everybody. See you next time.
All right, you guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay, live stream is off.
Yeah.
We're still recording.
and Anthony's gone too.
Yeah. Cool, man. That was super fun.
This was amazing, man. This puts, oh my God, this that gives me, you know, like food for inspiration for sure for the next coming weeks. Yeah.
There's lots of comments here too. So I was kind of replying. I figured you probably would too. Yeah. At some point.
Yeah, I did.
We can go back and do it too, because it'll be up there. So yeah. Super cool, man.
Yeah. Awesome. If Hammer was joining in, I'll shoot him a text if he wants to pop his head in. Oh
man, that'd be killer.
Yeah, because
that would be so good.
He's a walking encyclopedia about all of this stuff. Yeah. So, and I'm gonna give Willis a call, definitely. I have his number. I'll try to get him on the phone.
Yeah, and I mean, who's still alive? I just thought of as someone said it, probably Anthony. I don't know how lucid he is anymore, but Gary Foster.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I saw him at the Blue Whale not that long ago. He's getting pretty old, but he might be able to. You never know.
Yeah. Who did I talk to? I think I talked to Shep, and Shep said that he wasn't doing too good.
Oh,
But
okay.
it might be. I think Jimmy Immersion knows
Oh,
him
yeah.
pretty well, so I might
Yeah.
shoot a message to Jimmy, see if how Gary is doing.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
I've worked with him a few times. I can ask him too.
Okay. Oh
Over
yeah.
the
Well,
years,
if
I
you,
know him. Let me
if-
see
yeah.
if he's interested. But
Right.
I'll wait for your lead on that when you want to do it. So
Yeah. Well,
Cool,
I mean,
man.
I'll get in touch with Hammer first, see what
Cool.
he says, because he popped his nose in and he was digging it. So
yeah.
yeah, great.
Yeah, man.
All right.
See you next time.
On to the next one. Yeah.
Thanks for having me be a part of it, man. I'm having
Yep.
fun.
Oh, same here. Talk to you
Cool.
soon.
Later.
Later,
Bye.
Josh.
See ya.